Here is what nobody told you. While the most powerful nations on Earth were calculating their moves, running cost-benefit analyses, consulting foreign policy advisors, hedging their bets with the careful precision of men who have never lost anything, a small archipelago nation in Southeast Asia, 8,000 miles from the war zone, quietly did the one thing everyone else was too afraid to do. No announcement, no press conference, no demand for recognition in return. And when President Volodymyr Zelensky found out what they had done, a man who had stared down tanks in his own capital, who had walked through rubble where apartment buildings used to stand, who had refused evacuation when his own allies told him to run, he broke. Not in defeat, not in despair, he wept. Now, before you assume this is just another feel-good story from the margins of international news, stop. What actually happened here goes so much deeper than a vote, a press release, or a diplomatic gesture carefully engineered for maximum optics. What happened here is a masterclass in something most nations and most people have quietly, gradually, completely forgotten. How to be human when the whole world is watching and still choose humanity anyway. My name is Marcus, and over the next 15 minutes, I am going to show you something that will permanently change how you see the Philippines, how you understand power, and possibly how you see yourself. Stay with me, because most people miss what comes next, and the ones who don't, they remember it for the rest of their lives. February 24, 2022, 5 in the morning, Kyiv time. Russia crosses the Ukrainian border simultaneously from 3 directions. The attack is massive, coordinated, unlike anything Europe has seen since the Second World War. The United Nations Security Council convenes. World leaders scramble to phones. Embassies go dark. Airlines cancel flights. And here is what the world did. The United States condemned the invasion. The European Union sanctioned Russia. China called for dialogue and balance. India abstained. Dozens of nations offered carefully worded statements, the language of diplomacy designed to say something meaningful while committing to exactly nothing. You have to understand the pressure. Russia is a nuclear power. It controls a significant portion of the world's energy supply. It sits on the Security Council with veto power. Choosing a side carried real, lasting economic and political consequences. Dr. James Harrington, a senior fellow at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, D.C., said it plainly. Most governments run every foreign policy decision through the same filter. What does this cost us? What do we gain? There is very rarely room for pure moral clarity in international politics. Rarely, but not never. Because while the titans of global politics were calculating, while advisors were advising and press secretaries were carefully selecting exactly the right adjectives, the Philippines was not calculating. And that contrast between what the world's most powerful nations chose to do and what this small archipelago nation did instead is what turned a grateful Ukrainian president into a man undone by tears in front of his own staff. But here's where it gets interesting. The vote was not even the thing that made him cry.
March 22, 2022, 6 days after the invasion begins, the United Nations General Assembly calls an emergency special session, one of the rarest procedures in international law, reserved for crises of civilizational scale. 193 nations are invited to vote on a resolution demanding that Russia immediately cease military operations in Ukraine and withdraw from Ukrainian territory. 141 nations vote yes, 5 vote no, 35 abstain. The Philippines votes yes. Now, I need you to understand why that matters more than it sounds. The Philippines is a developing nation. Its economy depends significantly on remittances from OFWs, overseas workers, who send money home from dozens of countries, including Russia and Eastern Europe. Over 400,000 Filipinos work in the Russia-Eastern Europe corridor. Voting yes was not the easy choice. It was not the safe choice. Ambassador Enrique Manalo, the Philippine permanent representative to the United Nations, stood at that podium and said, "The Philippines stands with the Ukrainian people, not because it is convenient, not because it possesses no cost, but because sovereignty is not negotiable, because borders are not decoration, and because a world that permits the invasion of one nation today permits the invasion of every nation tomorrow." The chamber applauded. Zelensky's team marked that vote. They marked every single one, and they remembered the Philippines. But here's what most people miss entirely. The vote was the beginning. What happened next, quietly, without cameras, is what actually broke him.
There is a detail that almost no international coverage ever picked up. And this detail changes everything. In the opening days of the invasion, while governments were issuing statements and military analysts were drawing red arrows on television maps, there were Filipino nurses still showing up for their hospital shifts in Kyiv. Not because they were trapped. Some of them were already at the border. They could have left. They turned around. Joanna Reyes, 29 years old from Cebu City, had made it to the Polish border with her travel documents, her packed bag, and a valid evacuation authorization from the Philippine embassy. She was 20 minutes from safety. And then she saw a Ukrainian mother, a woman named Daria, mid-30s, collapsed against a concrete barrier with a 4-year-old and a 6-month-old infant in her arms. The 4-year-old had a fever of 39 degrees. The infant would not stop crying. The mother had been walking for 11 hours and had not slept in 2 days. Joanna stepped out of the queue. She went back. She sat down in the mud with Daria, opened her medical bag, and did not leave until that family was safe. 6 hours. She fed the children from her own emergency supplies. She held the infant so the mother could sleep for 20 minutes. A Ukrainian journalist photographed them. The image went viral inside Ukraine within 48 hours. Zhishensky's communications team sent it directly to him. He looked at that photograph for a long time. He did not know Joanna's name yet. He had never met her, but he knew what that kind of choice means. A person from the other side of the world with no political obligation, no military alliance, no financial arrangement, stepping out of safety and sitting down beside a stranger in the mud. He knew immediately. To understand why the Philippines' support landed so differently than anyone expected, you have to go back, way back. The Philippines knows what it feels like to be invaded. In 1565, Spanish colonizers arrived on Filipino shores and did not leave for 338 years. Then came the Americans in 1898. Then came the Japanese occupation during the Second World War, the Bataan Death March, the Manila Massacre of 1945, the years of guerrilla resistance, ordinary Filipinos hiding in mountain jungles, holding each other's lives in their hands. Dr. Rosa Almendras, a Filipino-American historian at UCLA whose family fled Manila during the Second World War, explains it this way. The Philippines has been on the receiving end of empire more times than most nations can count in a single century. And each time, the Filipino people didn't simply survive, they created something from the wreckage. Art, music, community. They found a way, against extraordinary odds, to hold on to who they are. That is not a small thing. That is the thing. Because when you have had your sovereignty stripped, when you have watched a larger power walk into your country and claim it as property, you never forget what that feels like, and you never, ever look at another people experiencing the same violation and pretend you don't understand. And back in the Philippines, something extraordinary was happening simultaneously. 12 Ukrainian families accepted humanitarian refuge there in 2023. Alina Kovalenko, 36 years old, had escaped Kyiv with her 2 children, Mykola, age 8, and Daria, age 5. Her husband remained in Ukraine. She arrived at Ninoy Aquino International Airport at 2 in the morning. She had not slept in 40 hours. The Dela Cruz family from Kazan City had cleaned and repainted the children's room. They had bought Ukrainian-colored bed sheets, blue and yellow, and they had spent 3 evenings learning to cook borscht, finding the recipe on YouTube, practicing it twice, getting it wrong the first time, trying again. When Alina walked into that apartment, when she saw the yellow and blue curtains, when she smelled the borscht, she sat down. She put her face in her hands, and she wept.
But here's what most people miss. This is not charity. This is not pity performed for cameras. And it is absolutely not a political calculation dressed up in the language of compassion. What the Philippines offered Ukraine is something that has a specific word in Filipino culture, malasakit. There is no clean English translation. It is not precisely empathy. It is not exactly compassion. It is not simply care. It is all 3 simultaneously, but with action built into the definition. Malasakit is not a feeling you have. It is a thing you do. The active, deliberate choosing of another person's burden as your own, not because it is required, not because there is advantage in it, but because you see them as fully human. And once you truly see another person as fully human, you cannot look away. Dr. Angela Bautista, a cultural anthropologist at De La Salle University in Manila, says it this way: malasakit is the reason a Filipino nurse steps out of a border queue to sit with a stranger in the mud. It is the reason a family in Quezon City spends 3 evenings learning to cook borscht for people they have never met. It is not taught in a classroom, it is lived in the bones. It is the accumulated inheritance of a people who have for centuries depended on each other for survival. And here is what made this disproportionately powerful in Kyiv. The Philippines did not wait to be asked. That is the detail Zazowski kept returning to in private conversations with his advisors, in public addresses to coalition partners. He said it in Ukrainian, in English, in formal diplomacy, and in unscripted moments. They did not wait to be asked. They simply came. The greatest acts of humanity in recorded history are almost never the ones that are requested. They are the ones that arrive unbidden, unexpected, in the exact moment when hope has become most difficult to sustain. Now, the moment this entire story has been building towards since the first frame. It did not happen at a press conference. It was not captured by international media. It was not staged for diplomatic effect. It happened in a private briefing room in Kyiv, a small room attended by a handful of senior advisors and Zazowski's communications director, a young woman named Oksana Timoshenko, 31 years old, who had been with his team since the beginning of the war and who had, in her own words, stopped expecting him to show anything he hadn't already shown. Zazowski was reviewing a comprehensive quarterly report on international support, country by country, vote by vote, humanitarian contribution by humanitarian contribution. When his advisor reached the Philippines section, this small archipelago on the other side of the planet, something changed in Zazowski's face. He asked for the photograph of Joanna Reyes to be pulled up on screen. He looked at it for a long time. No one spoke. Then he asked his advisor to read the full transcript of the Philippine UN ambassador's most recent speech, every word, out loud. And somewhere in the middle of those words, principles do not have expiration dates, Zazowski, who had not visibly cried in front of his staff in years, who had consciously built the discipline of presenting strength even in the moments when he had almost none left, put his right hand over his mouth and looked away from the table. Oksana Timoshenko later described the moment in a private interview. It was not sadness. That's the thing I want people to understand. It was not sadness. It was recognition.
It was a man who had been fighting and who had millions of people supporting him, but who sometimes, in the private hours of feeling the particular loneliness of leadership in crisis, and then suddenly feeling seen, truly seen, by people who had every political reason to remain quiet and chose not to. Recognition. The Philippines did not give Zazoski sympathy, did not give him money, did not give him weapons. It gave him the one thing that money cannot manufacture and military power cannot purchase. It gave him the recognition that his people's fight was righteous, legitimate, worthy of the world standing up, not because it was strategically advantageous, but simply because it was right, and saying, "We see you, we chose you, we will not look away."
Now, here is the twist that nobody saw coming. For decades, for literally decades, the dominant global narrative has positioned nations like the Philippines as recipients of development assistance, recipients of foreign policy consideration granted by more powerful nations according to their own strategic interests. The Philippines appears regularly in international discourse as a developing country that requires support, economically, politically, institutionally. The Philippines is supposed to be the one receiving. But in this story, in this quietly, spectacularly history-defying story, the Philippines became the teacher. Not through money, not through military capability, but through something the most powerful nations in the world had slowly, entirely lost sight of: moral clarity. The United States dithered for days before committing to anything definitive. Germany initially blocked weapons deliveries on grounds of legal complexity. France conducted back-channel negotiations with Moscow that its own European allies found baffling. China issued statements about balance. The Philippines, a nation that by every conventional metric of global power has less leverage, less capacity, less ability to absorb the diplomatic consequences of an unpopular choice, did not dither. It acted, clearly, consistently, on principle alone. Marcus Williams, a veteran foreign policy analyst and former U.S. State Department advisor who spent 7 years based in Southeast Asia, puts it plainly. There is a concept in international relations called credibility by proximity. It means your support carries a qualitatively different weight when you have lived experience with the situation you are supporting. When the Philippines speaks about sovereignty and the violation of it, they are not speaking theoretically. They are speaking from 400 years of exactly that. That carries a weight that a wealthier nation speaking the same words simply does not have. The student became the teacher. The small nation became the moral giant, and the man who had seen everything wept, not in despair, but in recognition. Let me say something that I think genuinely matters. What you have been watching unfold across the past 12 minutes is not merely a story about a war. It is not a diplomatic history. It is a story about what happens when you refuse, consciously, deliberately, against every social and political pressure to do otherwise, to let your own pain make you indifferent to someone else's. Most of us carry wounds, personal wounds, family wounds, national wounds, generational wounds that nobody asked to inherit but that shape everything regardless. And those wounds can do one of two things. They can close you in, make you small and defended and calculating and quietly convinced that you have your own problems, that there is not enough care left over for strangers. Or they can open you up, make you capable of a recognition and a solidarity that people who have never truly suffered simply cannot access, because access requires having been there. The Philippines chose open, again and again, over centuries, over colonizations and occupations, and the specific quiet erasures that happen to cultures considered small by those who consider themselves large. The Philippines stayed open. It did not become bitter. It did not become hard. It took 400 years of being underestimated, and it became, instead, a people with a specific, extraordinary, irreplaceable capacity for recognizing humanity in others. Carlos Reyes, a Filipino-American community organizer in Los Angeles who runs a national support network for OFW families, said this to me in a conversation I have thought about nearly every day since. We don't teach Filipino children to be kind because it will return something to them. We teach them to be kind because it is who we are.
That identity, the specific Filipino identity of caring, is not weakness. It has never been weakness. It is the most durable form of power I have ever encountered in my life. The most durable form of power. If you are Filipino or Filipino-American, or if you love someone who is, hear this directly and clearly. What you just heard is your legacy. Every hard thing your people have been through is not a wound to be ashamed of. It is a credential. It is the specific, irreplaceable thing that qualifies you, and only you, to stand up for others who are going through the same. The Philippines did not wait to be powerful before it made a powerful choice, and that choice made a president weep, made history, and sent this video, right now, at this exact moment, to find you.
Here is where I want to leave you, and here is the final twist. In March 2025, Sasaki delivered an address to a coalition of Asian Pacific nations, one of the largest gatherings of Asian leadership to engage with the Ukraine crisis. He could have led with statistics, with maps, with the names of new military allies. He led with a photograph. The photograph of Joanna Reyes, 29 years old, from Cebu City, sitting in a border crossing, holding a Ukrainian infant in her arms, while that child's exhausted mother slept on her shoulder. He held it up in front of the room. He let the silence hold, and then he said, "This is why we fight. Not for territory, not for politics, for the right to exist in a world where this is still possible, where a stranger from the other side of the planet can freely choose, without being asked, without being paid, without any calculation at all, to sit with you in the mud and not leave until you are safe." The room was silent for several seconds, and then they stood. Now I want something from you, and I want a real answer. Go to the comments right now and tell me, was what the Philippines did courage or character? Because there is an important difference. Courage is what you do when you are afraid. Character is what you do when no one is watching. The Philippines acted when the whole world was watching and the political risk was real, but they acted like no one was watching, like the only audience that mattered was the Ukrainian family in the mud. Was that courage or character? Tell me. Argue about it. Challenge each other. That conversation is exactly what this space was built for. And if this video gave you something, share it. Not for this channel. Share it because there are people in your life right now who need to be reminded that small choices have enormous weight. That where you come from is not your limitation, it is your credential. Share it for Joanna Reyes, sitting in the mud at the border. For Alina and Mikola and Daria, walking into a room that smelled like home. For Oksana Timoshenko, watching her president finally feel seen. And come back, because the next video answers the question sitting quietly beneath this entire story. What did the Philippines ask for in return? The answer is not what you think. I promise.